Have you ever stopped for a moment to think about your thinking? Now, I'm not asking you if you've stopped for a moment to think, because most of us from time to time stop just to think. But have you ever stopped for a moment to think about your thinking? One of the blessings I got out of Dan Sullivan's strategic coach program, which I was a member of several years ago, was that in the 4 sessions, in the 4 days that I was working with Dan over the period of a year, at the end of each of the 4 sessions, he would hand out a piece of paper where you would actually spend time reflecting on the thinking you just did in the previous exercise. On today's show, it's the Ask Me Anything show. So you get to come and ask anything. I'm going to give you a brand new format to be able to do that in just a moment. But before we get into that, I want to pause for a moment to talk about how to think about your thinking. And I'm going to use current events in the modern day United States of America to talk about that. Now, don't worry. We're going to do it in a safe place. In fact, we're going to do it in a fun place. And you're going to leave more empowered to go off and change the world. EdTalks Live is next. Hey, what's up, party people? My name's Ed Rush, 5-time #1 best-selling author, your host for the most positive place on the planet for insanely implementable ideas. Now, some of you who are long-time followers of the show are saying, wait a second, Ed, did you just say today is the Ask Me Anything show? I thought today was your interview with Alicia Doyle, Golden Gloves boxer, and you would be right about both of those things. We here in California are experiencing rolling power outages. And I was just on the phone about an hour ago with Alicia, who was very gracious to let me know ahead of time that her house was without power up in Ventura. And I said, look, I don't want you to feel stressed driving around on your phone trying to do an interview. So we're actually going to move that interview to next week so that you get the best from my friend Golden Gloves boxer Alicia Doyle. And that's going to be next Tuesday, assuming we have power. So we're going to shift gears real quick, and we're going to talk about how to think about your thinking. And then I'm going to open up today's lines, and I'm going to give you the chance to ask any question you want about your life or your business or productivity or thinking or the government and more. And what's more, there are now 2 avenues where you can ask the questions. Sure, you can put them in chat, which is what we normally do, and I'm happy to answer your questions that you put into chat. Start putting those in now. Anything that you've been interested in about money making, marketing, getting new customers and leads and persuasion, communication and productivity and time management and more. But I'm going to give you a second option, which is this. Right below me is a link that says edrush.com/join me. That actually brings you right into my control room and gives you the opportunity to ask your question live. Sometimes it's easier to just ask it than it is to type it. And that will bring you in via audio if you want, or via audio and video if you want. So here's your chance to be on the show. Okay, so either way is fine with me. You're welcome to jump in. I might have time or not, so there's no guarantees that I can get you in. But I want to jump in real quick and say hello to my friends in chat. Good morning, Barry. Good to see you from beautiful Palm Springs. I was just thinking about heading up there actually for a little retreat at some point soon. Good to see you, Robert, as well. What's up, Tim Bicker? Man, that's a really good question. I have a resource for you on that, by the way. So cyber coins. Well, so I'll get to that. I'll get to the question. What's up, man? Good to see you, Tim Bicker. All right. So without any further ado, I'm actually going to jump up on the whiteboard. But before I do that, for those of you who just joined us, today is the Ask Me Anything show. Now, here's the plan for this week, by the way. On Thursday, I have a very important show for you. I'm calling this a totally Top Gun approach to setting goals. A totally Top Gun approach to setting goals. I have come across, by experience, a completely transformative way of setting and accomplishing goals. I haven't really shared it much, but when you learn this new approach, it'll blow your mind, and it will show you with near 100% definitive proof why modern day goal setting is designed to set you up for failure. Now, I will send an email out with a little bit of a description on this on Thursday morning, but this show is a can't miss. So put Thursday, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern down on your calendar. And then, of course, today's show, which was supposed to be today, but isn't because of the power situation in California. Alicia Doyle My friend and Golden Gloves champion is going to join us next Tuesday. By the way, I mentioned, California, Edison and SDG&E are having this issue with rolling blackouts due to the wind and the Santa Ana conditions that came across. And we've had issues with power here in California for like the last 5 years, prompting me to be reminded about our philosophy in California when it comes to power, which is this. California, see, we don't like producing power. We just like using a lot of power. Did you catch that? We don't like producing it. That would be really bad. We just like using a lot of it, okay? So if you ever want to move to California, just remember, you can't produce power here, but you definitely need to use it, okay? That's all I'll say about that. What's up? Good to see you, Michael Simmons. Hey, Delisa, good to see you. Hey, what's up, man? I can take compliments like that all day. Hello, Wendy Lee. Good to see you from sunny Portland. All right, I am going to jump up on the whiteboard, and we're going to get cranking today. Again, today is the Ask Me Anything show, which basically means that you can come on board and you can ask me anything. Now, there's two ways to do that. Put it in the chat. I already had one question when it comes to crypto, which I will answer in just a moment and give you a resource for, actually. The other way, by the way, is right here below. You're more than welcome to follow that link, edrush.com/join me. That brings you into my control room. It doesn't automatically bring you onto the show. I have to push a button for that to happen, but it'll bring you in, get you a chance to ask your question live. And normally on these shows, just so you know, if this is your first time here for Ask Me Anything, normally on these shows, the way it works is I get like one question in the first 20 minutes, and then the answer to that one question spurs about 50 other questions, and then we run out of time by the end of the show. Okay, so I'm going to start today's show with some thoughts on your thinking. Okay, now to lead you into this, I will simply tell you that the biggest crisis we have in the United States of America right now is not the Republican Party. The biggest crisis we have right now is not the Democratic Party. The biggest crisis we have in the United States aren't those extreme, dangerous, quote-unquote right-wingers or those dangerous Antifa people on the left. The biggest issue we have right now in the United States of America is, as a culture, we don't think well. In many cases, as a culture, we've outsourced our thinking to other entities. And I'm going to give you an example of that in just a moment. Now, I believe I am speaking to the choir. If I'm talking to you right now, there's a very good chance you're an independent thinker and you're looking at what's happening inside of our culture right now, and you're almost pulling your hair out physically, literally, emotionally, and spiritually, and saying, like, I don't know what to do about this. And I'm going to give you some thoughts on what to do in just a moment and show you how this destructive approach towards thinking is becoming a major issue here in our country, okay? And then I'm going to open up the lines. We're going to talk. Tim, I'm going to answer your question about crypto. Robert, I see you in the control room. I'm going to bring you in, buddy, to answer your question, and then we're going to get cranking with today. So you hear this phrase a lot. You hear people say, well, you know what? I am an independent thinker. And I use that phrase actually just in my introduction to this segment. Now, the challenge to this particular phrase is in truth, it's literally impossible to be a truly independent thinker. So when we use that phrase, and I think we use the phrase well, what we're saying is we think independently of the memes and the cultural mores that are moving in a certain direction. Now, the reason why it's impossible to truly be an quote-unquote independent thinker, in fact, it's in certain cases detrimental to be an independent thinker, is because first, we all live in a world together. That world operates under a certain set of rules and principles. This world moves around at about 24 hours, and it moves around the sun at about 365 days. And we have times and seasons and locations that we live in. And because of that, we think and move in a certain way that would be different from other cultures, potentially on other planets. The second thing is we are in a specific time frame, okay? Because we live in a specific time frame, we have earned the right to understand what people understood before us. For that reason, we have a belief system about certain things. So for example, if you use the word freedom, if you say the word freedom to someone in 2021, it's typical for them to think about things like freedom of speech, or potentially of freedom, of financial freedom, or the ability to, just wake up in the morning and kind of do whatever you want to. But if you use this term freedom in 15th century England, it would mean a completely different thing. I mean, in 15th century England, you had the aristocracy, the earls and the kings and the dukes. And then you had sort of this class of people who were really tradesmen, the people who built buildings and the people who made clothing and that sort of thing. And then you had this class of servants and serfs. A serf would work a piece of land and earn money from that land, but owe taxes to the landowner, which in certain cases was an aristocrat. And then, of course, you had servants who were serving these upper class folks. Well, depending on where you were in that rank structure, your term freedom could be completely different. I mean, if you were a serf working the land and you thought of the word freedom, freedom for you might be simply the freedom to be able to choose what crop to plant on what piece of this ground that you would be giving a massive tax to the earl because you lived in that particular place. Literally, that might be your version of freedom. Moving up and down through the rank structure, it wasn't even part of the thought process. Literally, even until the 20th century, for someone to move from one caste to the next. Freedom in 16th century India was significantly different than India in 2021. For example, in 16th century India, they were stuck in what's called a caste system. Okay, so if you were high caste or low caste, there was literally nothing you were going to be able to do to move from one to the other. So freedom for you might literally have simply been the ability to take just a couple hours off of work on one day a week. So because we live in a time and a place, we forget sometimes that these words mean different things because we are set to a time and place, and therefore our thinking can be oftentimes not as independent as we would like to be. Okay, the third thing is our upbringing. Okay, our upbringing brings a certain bias into the way that we think typically. So you were grown in a different way than I was. I was raised by two coaches, okay? So I was raised to think, performance is a really big thing, and kind of being in shape is a big thing, and, engaging in sports is a big thing, and certainly watching sports is a big thing. And I've really transitioned out of that in the time that I've sort of grown up and, had my own family. I mean, sports is not a big deal for me anymore. I maybe watch the Super Bowl, okay? And the World Series, but it's not like every week, like it used to be, because things have changed, because my thinking has changed, but that took some time. So the first thing I'll tell you is, when you think about your thinking, one of the most important things to think about is the frame in which you think. And I'm going to give you some tools on how to be able to do that. One of the most powerful things you can do to create an independent way of thinking is to pull yourself out of your frame for a moment, to look at the course of history and then put yourself back inside your frame and see where you're at on that. So I just laid out the difficulty in independent thinking. Now, I'm going to play you a video, okay? And this video will show you, I think, with great detail, the kind of thinking that's common in our culture and why. And then I'm going to talk about how to think independently. And I'm not going to say anything more about the video. I'll talk about my comments after it. Here you go.
Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish things that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 I can't stop laughing. I'm watching. I love each newscaster. They put their own, like the one woman who's like, this is extremely dangerous to our democracy. Anyway, you get the point. Now, to be fair to those wonderful people in the news, okay? I've done local news. They're great people, okay? And they mean well. And I'll just tell you, you don't come up with like 5 hours of content every morning on your own. They're given scripts, and those scripts are written by people, and all of those companies are owned by one company. And the things I just said, given scripts, companies owned by, nothing's wrong with that, okay? Now, you can see, however, this group think that becomes a talking point that eventually you read like a friend of yours on social media, and I'm not even kidding you. You will literally read like 2 days later, your friend post an independent thought that will say something like, this is really dangerous to our democracy. Now, the interesting thing about that is your friend, that person literally posted that thinking that they were thinking independently. Isn't that interesting when you think about it? I mean, right now, and I do not intend to go into this as a topic right now, but right now the idea of free speech and the word dangerous are connected. So you see a lot of posts right now on social media of people who are talking about the kind of speech that is dangerous. Let me just tell you, there are things that are dangerous. For example, if I had a grizzly bear in my office right now, I would not be talking to you the way I'm talking to you right now, because grizzly bears are dangerous. Terrorists on airplanes are dangerous. People who take weapons, actual weapons, and point them in the faces of bank tellers. That's dangerous. Words, on the other hand, are powerful. Words can move people. Words can quickly offend people, but very, very few words are actually dangerous. It's important to think about that. The things people do when motivated by those words can be dangerous, but isn't it interesting even now when you see how the social media dialogue has connected words to danger? It gives people the opportunity to say, no, you shouldn't even be able to talk about that topic because I've chosen that it is dangerous. Our culture right now, by the way, truly believes that if something violates their version of the truth, therefore it's dangerous. So for example, you might be really, really big into the idea of vaccinating the world. Well, some people think that's dangerous. You're thinking. You may be really into the belief that vaccinating the world is actually truly a bad thing to do. But some people think you're dangerous. Wouldn't it be nice for all of us to be able to talk about that without one person saying, yeah, you need to shut down. We need to shut that person down because they're dangerous. We come to better solutions as a culture when we communicate. Okay, so when you're thinking about your thinking, I've got 5 quick things to talk about, and then I'm going to open up the lines. We're going to chat, okay? Number 1, it is important to choose your lens, okay? Now, the interesting embedded thought in this concept that I'm giving you right here is choosing your lens assumes you have a lens. Remember what I said? We live in a culture and a frame and a time in history and with an upbringing, and it's very difficult to take yourself out of that and to think like an alien looking back at the earth. So let's assume that you start with a lens, a way of looking at things. If you do, then my suggestion is to put together a set of multiple lenses that allow you the freedom to be able to think and potentially change your mind. For example, one of my personal lenses that I typically like to use is y'all know I read and often quote the Bible. I think it's a great piece of history. I also think it's a solid piece of wisdom. Okay. The other thing I do is I read a lot of history. I mentioned earlier 15th century England, 16th century India. When you read a lot of history, you get scope. You get a bigger understanding of the world that we're in, and you get less dramatic leaps back and forth. So for example, was Christopher Columbus a jerk? Yeah, he was kind of a jerk, but you know what? When he started out, I'm talking about like when he started out, that man's intentions were pure. That man had the vision to be able to go across the world and to do something amazing. And his vision was tarnished when he got there because of gold. If you understand the whole story, you understand, wow, you know what? Maybe I could start out with good intentions and I could get turned too. And therefore, I'm going to make sure that I have friends around me to keep me from doing that. You see, understanding history understands wisdom. Right now, it's really common to just tear the statue down of Christopher Columbus and just be like, him, bad guy. Well, that deletes the nuance of personal history. The second thing, and this is really important, is when it comes to your thinking, that it is to be slow to respond. Slow to respond. My new theory, or my new rule right now is 2 weeks. 2 weeks, okay? When something happens, wait 2 weeks before you even make your first determination about that thing. So for example, it was 2 weeks ago, actually tomorrow, that our United States Capitol had people running through it who didn't work there, okay? In the exact moment, the entirety of the United States of America, 340 million people, minus the 20 million babies, immediately in that moment made a decision. Half of the United States, by the way, said it's those Trump people, and Trump should just go to jail. Okay, his words made people do these things. The other half, which I was following both, the other half said no, it was a bunch of like Antifa people who started it. You see, and they're the ones that were in there. Well, guess what? You can't have one and not the other. There are bad people in our country on both sides. We have a bad immune system in our country because we don't communicate well, and because of that, we have ugliness on both sides. So were there right-wingers there? Yep. Were there left-wingers there? Yep. Were there everybody in between? Yes. Okay, that's the subtle nuance of being able to wait a couple weeks and go, yeah, that guy was probably Antifa. Look at the picture of him right there. You can see, okay, you can actually start to put those things together. Now, there is a verse, speaking of the Bible, right out of James, says this. Good point, by the way, my dear brothers and sisters. Take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Did you catch that? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. We have the opposite happening in our culture right now. We're very quick to get offended. We're very quick to get angry. We're very fast to speak, and we don't listen at all. Okay? So the first one is choosing your lens and wisely choosing your lens. The second one is being slow to respond. The third one, this is important, assume you know about 2% of the story. Okay? Assume you know about 2% of the story. Now, I have kids, and sometimes those kids love and embrace each other, and sometimes those kids smash into each other. So I can tell you that if I have two boys, 13 and 12, if they come running upstairs because they're upset, okay, I can guarantee you that the first thing they say is not right. And the first thing always goes like this: it was him. My 13-year-old goes, it was his fault. My 12-year-old goes, it was his fault. And I already know they're both wrong, okay? They're both wrong. But at that point, I know about 2% of the story. In fact, I bring in my own biases. One of my kids had a bad day. The other one had a good day. One of them didn't do the dishes. The other one did the dishes. I'm bringing my bias into the situation as well. But I'm going to start by thinking I know about 2% of the story. Right now in our culture, we as a culture, sometimes our culture assumes we know about 200% of the story. See, you don't understand. I know everything about the heart of Donald Trump. People say, I know he's just mean And he was out to get people. I know it. You don't know about 2% of the story. You weren't there in the intelligence briefings. You don't know what terrorist Iran sent over. You don't know any of that stuff. Neither do I, okay? Now, the fourth one, I'm going to wrap this up in a second. Robert, you are waiting patiently. I'm going to get to you, buddy. The fourth one is what I call purposeful intake, okay? Purposeful intake is what you put into your brain, into your ears, and into your eyes. That's what you read, what you listen to, okay? That comes down to music and books and podcasts and shows like this. If you put positive things in front of you, positive things will come out. If you put negative things in front of you, negative things will come out. If you spend your time playing violent video games, you're gonna wanna punch somebody, okay? So the way that you bring intake in, that's why shows like this are really important, all right? To stay connected to positive people. And number 5, I'm gonna wrap this up in a second, is empathy, okay? This is the biggest most screwed up thing about cancel culture. Okay? Everyone who participates in cancel culture right now has stupid stuff that they did in college that they would never want anyone to know. Why do I know that? Because everybody has stupid stuff they did in college that they never want anyone to know. Okay? The problem, okay, is this simple rule that you've probably heard of. You should do unto other people what you would want them to do to you. So if you want to be outed for all the dumb stuff you said 20 years ago, look, we lived in a different world 20 years ago. There were different things that were right and wrong to say 20 years ago. We've gotten better about that in 20 years. So you don't want to judge somebody for right. That's like the craziest thing about canceling books that were written in the 1940s. Look, that is as nuts as thinking about the fact that 60 years from now, they could be canceling people like us, right? Like literally, I put slow to respond, Bible verse. 60 years from now, people be like, nope, I'm canceling anybody. But next thing you know, this show deleted off YouTube because I actually put the words from James on there. I'm serious. Look, if you think 60 years from now, they're not going to look at us right now and be like, what idiots, man. Like they almost destroyed the world, okay? They're going to think we're idiots. Why? Because sometimes we're idiots, okay? But we're in process. We're in process just like everyone else is. Look, the good news is you're not as good as you think you are. The great news is that you're in process and you're getting better, and so am I, okay? So bring a little empathy to the situation is gonna help things out a lot. Okay, that is thinking about your thinking. I started by talking about how it's impossible to be a truly independent thinker. If you missed that part, go back after the show's over. Then we went into how to choose your lens, be slow to respond, assuming you only know 2% of the story, create purposeful intake. I use Bible, history, good things like that, and then creating empathy. All right, so that's it. Well, I'm going to jump into chat real quick, and then I'm going to jump into Tim. I'm going to answer your question. Thank you for hanging out. And then I'm going to take any other questions that come in, and we're going to rock and roll. All right, so, man, there's some good questions in here. So Tim says, when am I moving to Texas? So it's not happening anytime soon. I don't know though. Hey, like I'm trying to find a state that just, will let you be and not take all your money, but it seems like Texas is heading in that direction. Okay, so I am not an investment person. I did a show with Joel Comm on cyber. I can tell you that right now, cryptocurrency is kind of acting like gold. It's a good hedge against inflation. And I don't have time to go into economic forces right now. What I will tell you is the history for the last 20 years or so, inflation has been about 3%. 3%, what I mean by that is that the Federal Reserve has put about 3% more money into supply than there was the previous year, okay? So say there's $1 trillion moving around. Well, they took $1 trillion, put about $3 billion in, or $30 billion and put about 3% more into supply. In 2020, they put 40% more. So you think about that, 3%, 3%, 3%, 40%. Prices haven't caught up, so car prices are roughly the same. Groceries have moved just a little bit, but in typical numbers. But you can't do that. That's unsustainable from a fiscal standpoint, and they're about to do it again, by the way. So what has to happen is either inflation completely takes off or they start to pull back growth, and they do that by raising interest rates. Okay, so because of that, people are moving into silver, gold, cryptocurrency, because crypto is acting like a little bit of an inflationary hedge. Where crypto goes has a lot to do with the big investors right now in crypto, and that's not necessarily true with the markets and with gold. All right, so I'll give you that short version and then go to my show with Joel Comm. I think Maybe Delise, if you can find the link to that show, that would be awesome. All right, so I answered your 2 questions. Tim, you can roll if you want to. Oh, he said, honest observation. You're an officer. You're talking like a season 1, like a lieutenant colonel or colonel. You need a sergeant major by your side. I was a gunnery sergeant, but I know a handful of E9s that would be a good match for you. Someone help you bring your big ideas to ground level. I don't know if you've done this yet, but I think it would be a huge asset. I think I have one of those, and her name is, where are you at? Hold on a second. Her name is Lisa Toole. All right, so you've been waiting for a while, Robert, my friend, my man. What's up, buddy? How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Hey, yes, can you hear me?
You are my first, I was just trying this out today. By the way, for those of you who don't know what I just did there, it's edrush.com/join me. You're welcome to come on, interact, and ask your question live. And Robert, I believe it's perfect. You've been such a faithful attendee and friend of the show and of me. So I thought it was perfect that you were the first one to come on live to ask a question or share your comment. What do you got, buddy?
Well, I can hear it. Is everything okay?
Yeah, let me change the audio setting, but you go talk. Just go ahead and talk.
Sure.
While we're going.
It was interesting that you cited James, because right before that came up on the screen, that's exactly the verse I was thinking about yesterday. Andy Stanley was talking about it, referring to it. And it's like, when you slow down, you stop, you don't get angry, and you listen, the more you'll learn and understand. And so therefore you'll understand the person and you won't be so angry. Anyway, I have an incidental question and more a serious question.
Yeah.
Was your dad a referee or a coach for the Bucks?
Oh, good. So my dad's history, the short history, was he was a high school football coach and a high school teacher. He was making $7,000 a year as a teacher and $400 a year as a coach. And he was also refereeing basketball. Somebody went to watch his partner, who was refereeing at high school. They saw my dad. They invited him to New York. He met with the chairman of the NBA. This was 1966. And the commissioner of the NBA said to my dad, he said, we'd like you to come referee in the NBA. And my dad said, well, I'm making $7,400 a year and I'm happy. And the guy said, well, I'll give you $100 a game and I'll give you 80 games. And my dad did the math and said it was $8,000. And the next day he was refereeing in Madison Square Garden. My dad was a National Basketball Association referee for 32 years. Then he was the director of officials for the NBA for 5 years. Then he went and coached college football for 8 years. And then he went and was a consultant to the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. And that's his genealogy right there. So I thought it would be fun to give you the whole thing. My dad's a pretty amazing guy, and I'm thrilled that he's my dad. So
yeah, and you mentioned the Bucks before in the past, and I came from Wisconsin, so that caught my attention, of course. And anyway, serious question.
Yep, I'm ready.
As you know, I promote you for the 2024 or whenever you're going to run, and I was wondering if it's okay, if it's too premature. I want to put on the side of my van, edrushforamerica.com, and maybe a word or a slogan or something. Is it too premature? And if you do have a 1 or 2 or 3 word, 5-word slogan to go with it, let me know.
Yeah, here, I'm going to do something really quickly. I've never done this either, Robert. I'm literally going to leave my studio and come back. This is a first too. You're not really supposed to walk off camera. I just want to say thank you publicly. So Robert sent me, I had these little cards that I was giving out. Robert sent me this beautiful note that he sent to Ralph Reed, I believe, Faith and Freedom Coalition. I hope you don't mind that I'm showing that. Robert sent me a copy of it. I still have this on my wall, just so you know. It literally sits over my wall, and there's not much on my wall over there. So this is the kind of encouragement that really, really helps. So Robert, I'm going to give you a background so that everybody who's watching and listening, let me just check the audio here because I can hear it. Actually, if you maybe just, Robert, can turn your speakers down just a tiny little bit, that might help just a little bit with that. Thank you, Tim.
I'm going to mute me.
So here's the story on that. And then, in fact, yeah, so I'll just give it to you really quickly. It was about 2014, 15 that I believe God set my eyes on national leadership. Much with anything, timing is the most important thing. So if you're in the military, you attack when the time is right. If you're in the cooking industry, like timing is really, really important. And sometimes as human beings, that's the thing that we, sometimes you just don't know. And so you're reliant on what's happening in the world. You're reliant on wisdom, the advice of friends, and that sort of thing. And I will just tell you, we pushed really hard about 2 years ago for this 2020 thing. And the answer that I got from most of my dear friends and followers was one of two things. The answer was either, well, look, if we don't get Donald Trump back for another term, the world's going to go to hell. Or I got, if we don't get Donald Trump out, the world's going to go to hell. And so most of the people I was talking to, Robert, had this, gosh, I hate to call it a delusion, but it was at least an illusion that if we could just get this or not this, then everything would be okay. And what was happening, the interesting, first of all, that was discouraging for somebody like me who's like, look, neither one of these are the best option. The best option is for us to come together as Americans and really create the kind of change that we want to create because we communicate well with each other. Well, much like great ideas, sometimes the time has to come. And I will tell you, about 2 weeks ago, I started getting more emails in my inbox about this than I've ever seen before. A lot of those people on both sides were like, look, I think it's time for this whole third party thing. Now, as a culture, historically, our American culture has made, I'm going to use this term loosely, but I'm going to say has made an idol to worship out of something in our governmental system. So for years, people were like, if we could just get the Supreme Court, everything would be fine. If we could just get the White House, everything would be fine. If we could just get the House and the Senate and the White House, we'll be able to change everything. And I will tell you, in 2012, the Democrats had the House and the Senate and the White House. And in 2016, the Republicans had the House and the Senate and the White House. And you know what? Not everything changed the way that we wanted, that everybody wanted things to be changed. And so as a culture, we're constantly chasing this thing that we think exists on earth while at the same time rejecting this other thing when the answer is actually right in front of us. I mean, we know how to communicate, how to be empathetic, how to talk about the issues without getting angry. And so I think the time is coming. I don't know, Robert, when the time is. I will tell you that I'm going to pull up, I'm just going to read you a verse that is my verse right now. And I'll tell you, I haven't told barely anybody this. I'm just going to read it. Hang on a second. It's Amos chapter 5, verse 13. Therefore, the prudent will keep quiet in such times, for the times are evil. And so there are times where I haven't been on Instagram or any social media except for these shows for quite some time. There's a reason for that. I don't have a desire to get into the argument. I don't want to engage on this is dangerous for our democracy. What I want to do is pray for the country and then wait for the time that's right. And at this point, literally, I am waiting for whenever the time is right and I get a go order and we're go. So that is the most ambiguous. I wish I had a date for you, but I don't. But dude, I appreciate your kindness and dude, there's 1,000 more like you, buddy, but none with the fervor. You unmute yourself. I just want to say thank you, but I do appreciate you, and it's going to happen. I just don't know when. 4 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now, something. Hopefully sooner than later. But
okay, well, if it's all right with you, it sounds like it wouldn't do any harm to put your Ed Rush for America on the side of my van, so people can at least go to there and learn about you.
It would make my day, brother. It would put a huge smile on my face. And if ever I get back to Texas, you and I can ride around on it and have some fun.
The other thing, 60 Minutes had a little thing at the end. Angus King, do you know him?
Yeah, independent senator from Maine,
Delaware. Up there. Yeah, Maine. I think it is Maine. You're right. And I was actually thinking about writing to him. And I mean, I'm just going to start writing to people again, and just say, hey, because I was wondering maybe he would flip over to your party, whatever it's going to be. I mean, I liked him.
I think about a third of the Republican Party and almost half of the Democratic. I don't have time to go into the schisms and all the parties. You're seeing it again in the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party actually has a much larger break in it than the Republican Party does. The Democratic Party used to be the party of personal liberties. The ACLU came out of the Civil Liberties Union came out of that. And there are a lot of disaffected Democrats who are working people, union people, civil liberties people who are looking at their party and they're like, what the heck is happening in my party? So that's happening in both the parties. So we'll get it. It's just a matter of time. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate you, man.
What about attracting the independents?
Yeah, well, so every year in America, 1% of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party leave and become independents. So that whole movement it's all happening behind the scenes. It's just a matter of that. So, all right, buddy, appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming on. Tim said, run independent. We're sick of everybody. I don't know anybody who isn't. Amos 5:13. Yeah. REAGAN, I guess is what the one you're talking about. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Delisa says, does Texas have electricity? I was joking with her before. I said, California likes to use electricity. We just don't like to produce it. This is a good line too. I was talking about the way that people think, right? So I said, you'll be judged. Brian says, this is a Bible verse. You'll be judged in the measure that you use. Okay. So if you're like scrutinizingly, look, we make mistakes. I've said stuff on this show that I wish I didn't say. I've said stuff. I did a show once with Marquetta, and I said something. I said something the wrong way. I didn't even. I said, "Oh man, I'm glad that happened." And when I said that, I was responding to something previous, but some people thought I was responding to something here. And it sounded like I was a racist, okay? And she was like, 5 minutes later, she's like, hey, just to clarify. I'm like, oh, thank God we clarified. So even sometimes you don't even mean to say something, but people interpret something, and next thing you know, you're in trouble. And that's the world that we live in. Hey, Chris, what's up? I got you, buddy. I'm going to bring you in just a second. I'm going to bounce through some of these other questions real quick. Go to the publisher for my book. Do they typically launch on Amazon too in the way that you do? Nope. A book publisher will not do the same book categorizing. You could do it on your own if you want to, or you could work with them to do that. That's why I do like the idea of sometimes hybrid publishing, where you get a book into bookstores, but no. Honest Ops. Oh, I already read this one. Bob. So the video that I played, those are all stations are Sinclair stations, so they get scripts on the news every morning. That way, they don't have to each research the whole news by themselves. So that's pretty common in the news world. There's nothing wrong with that. There's just the one way to distribute news. It's just screwed up when they start droning on like that. That's good stuff, man. Yeah, this is I played if you didn't see it, I should just go to Google and type in it. Extremely dangerous to your democracy. Hey, what's up, Sajid? Good to see you as well. All right, I love this. He says, prayerful thankfulness, at least 3 things. When you wake up, when you go to bed, it's changed my life. Sorry about the comments. Please don't block me. Oh, I like this. I like this comment. Barry says, California does produce energy. We just don't have a way to. The Justice Party. I've got some names. This comment is really funny. That would be perfect, though, wouldn't it? Just in the Bay Area alone, we'd be able to produce this powerful state. What's up, Chris? How you doing, my man? From Colorado Springs, ladies and gentlemen. He's got his flag in the background and everything. What's up?
Yes, sir. Yes, I do.
I'm wrapping up the show with you, man. So jump in. What do you got?
Yeah. I'm in my little studio right now where we do the podcast. So I'm cracking up from that last comment. That was hilarious. Sorry, I'm looking at my computer here. My camera's up here.
Yeah.
So my question is regarding just social media in general. I'm kind of in the nonprofit ministry world, also in the business world. And there seems to be two methods of thought right now as far as social media goes. Half the people I talk to are like, we need to remain on social media and be an influence within the social media, even though there's a bunch of, overstepping bounds, whatever. And then the other half is like, no, let's revolt, basically. Let's boycott it all. Let's do our own thing totally. So do you have I don't know, maybe an opinion about either of those, some insight as to is one right or the other, one better than the other, or is it kind of relative on where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a moral, ethical question, and then there's the business question, right? And the question, just to kind of summarize, was he's in the nonprofit ministry world. Social media is a reality that people still pay attention to, but a lot of people are like, hey, just boycott it, completely get off it. And other people are like, well, kind of use it. So I'm going to just kind of lead you. I'm going to share with you my thinking regarding the social media platforms right now and what I'm personally doing. And then, and then Chris, I'm just going to be really transparent and just tell you that my thinking about this is not fully formed yet. And it's certainly not completed yet. I'm just wrestling through some issues, and I'll just share how I'm wrestling through these issues with regard to social media. So when we talk about social media, there are really three companies that we're talking about, in my opinion. You've got, or there's four, but you've got LinkedIn, which is owned by Microsoft. You have Facebook and Instagram, which are owned by Facebook. And then you've got Twitter, which is obviously owned by Twitter. And then I said four. Those are the three. And then the fourth one is Google, that basically owns everything, all the behind the scenes analytics, YouTube, and all those sort of things. So there are those four companies. Now, if you were to look at those four companies and you were to say to yourself, which of those companies would I personally be comfortable owning the morality behind? You really would come up with nothing. Like Microsoft hasn't exactly proven itself to be like a shining star in the world. Google certainly hasn't. I mean, Google's motto used to be "Don't be evil," and now they took it away like 5 years ago. And you can see why. Facebook is awful, and Twitter's awful. And not only are they awful as a company, in my opinion, but they're awful in how they use their money, and they're awful in how they use their influence. Now, I don't think that was intentional. I don't think they set out to try to ruin the world. In fact, I think if you got them together and said, what do you think about how your technology is being used? They would say, much like they've said publicly, that it's being used in a way that they didn't intend it. They didn't want to addict people to their platform and create vitriol. They wanted to create a place of community. But of course, they created something that actually something else came from it. And so right now, I'm separating two parts of it. Number one, there's the paid aspect. You can pay Google for a lot of stuff, including Gmail, Suite, and YouTube ads and stuff. You can pay Facebook for a lot of stuff like Facebook ads and Instagram ads. You can pay Twitter if you want to as well. Okay. I am personally not interested right now in giving them any money at all. I look at it like this. If there was a company that bought and sold slaves, I wouldn't invest in that company. I wouldn't typically buy things from that company. And even investing a few dollars in that company would be supporting something that I don't agree with. Okay, so at this point, I'm not putting any money into that machine. Now, I will say that's to my detriment, because if I did, I would grow more, okay? But at the same time, I'm hesitant to leave there as a content producer, because if all the good people in the world left, the dialogue would truly be awful and disgusting and evil, okay? So part of my belief around that is that it's kind of like a rescue operation. And the other part about it is people expect to see you there. So if you're not there as a company or even as a ministry, they'll think, what is this person like not legit, right? So a simple presence on those places. But I'm not engaging in dialogue right now. I'm not doing any commenting right now. I'm not sharing, I'm not sharing sort of like the Donald Trump is the greatest in the world, and I'm not sharing Donald Trump is Hitler. I'm not really engaging on any of that, other than at times to try to lift the conversation up, much like I did today in the introduction. So where I drew the line so far is where the money's at. And that was the first decision I made. And I'm hesitant to just depart the pattern completely because, like I said, I don't want to leave people there. And now they think, oh, all the thought leaders think this way, when not all the thought leaders think that way. Most of them left, who would think a different way. So does that help you think through that a little bit?
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate being able to delineate between your financial support and maybe your social support. That's super helpful.
Yeah, and the social support could go away. I mean, I wasn't thrilled. Parler wasn't a phenomenal like community. It was really sort of a conservative echo chamber. But I did build a platform there because I was interested in utilizing that as a communication stream for my message. I wasn't thrilled, like, for example, when Parler got bashed by all those other companies, they went after him and basically said, this is like so dangerous. And I'm like, wait a second, they're a competitor. Like, they're your competitors. So like, are we supposed to not believe that in your like, they're so dangerous that like, and if you use the same standard, so people on Parler were talking about like, how do we meet up to go to Washington? Well, guess what? They were doing on Facebook too. So do we do that now? Do we get rid of Facebook because it's dangerous? I didn't hear anybody talk about that, which made me think, oh, so like you're going to get rid of a competitor. You look at things from potentially a different angle when you're not like, when your dog isn't in the race,
Totally.
So anyway, it's like a little.
I was just going to say real quick, have you heard of Clubhouse at all?
Yeah. I've gotten like 3 invitations so far to Clubhouse. I just haven't gone there yet. So I intend to. My whole approach towards business, Chris, is a good idea is a good idea, but 10 good ideas is one big bad idea. And so I'm usually a little slow to move on like shiny new object ideas, simply because I already know what my mission in life is. And I'm taking my instructions from my conversation with God too. And I'm just kind of listening and trying to avoid, spreading out, because that's one of the biggest mistakes an entrepreneur will make is, being a jack of all trades and a master of none, and being everywhere, but not really anywhere, So I'm just trying to use my time wisely.
Cool.
So,
awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for your questions, buddy. Really, really good questions. Thanks, bud.
Yep. Thank you.
Terry Data said hello. All right, cool. Thank you. We're talking about Texas and power grids. There are 3 electric grids in the U.S. and 1 is in Texas. Oh gosh, I've thought of 10 different names. The one I really liked was the American Party, but apparently that's like a already formed racist organization. It's like a white supremacist organization. That one can't be that one. All right. That's so great. Texas has and produces electricity and barbecue. All right. Social media is a great way to serve and benefit people. Lots of hurting people in the world right now. Yeah, good point. Serious question. When you have time with parties divided, where should sober, right, appropriate people align themselves? I think you should just come to EdTalks. I do the show twice a week, Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 Eastern. By the way, if you're watching, there's a subscribe button on YouTube down there. Click that button and the bell right next to it. If you're on Facebook, click the like button, click the share button. I'm serious, man. Like there's a lot of ugliness out there. Why don't you just tell people about the place that's positive? Oh man, we had a fun show today. So I started today. By the way, just for those of you who are like, wait a second, I was supposed to interview Alicia Doyle. We were going to talk about how to accomplish anything. Her power went out. That's why we're talking about power. California likes to use power, just not produce it. That's what I don't know why I think that's so funny. And so we're going to have to do an interview with her next week. This Thursday is a very important show, by the way. I'm going to walk you through a totally Top Gun approach to setting goals, a brand new approach. It blew my mind when I discovered it, kind of on my own, digging for gold. And when I started using it, I realized why most goal setting leaves you depressed, frankly, and how you can create and achieve things fairly quickly if you have one thing in place. I'm going to send an email out, my weekly flight brief about that this week. By the way, if you're not on my email list, there's the website below. Boom, edrush.com. Jump on there. You're going to get great stuff from me. Okay, I send you good things. And of course, you can opt out at any time, but who would ever want to do that? Okay, so today was the Ask Me Anything show. I'm going to wrap it up here. The Rational Nationals. I like it. Yeah. Water too. We have a lot of water, man. A lot of water in California. That is it for today. Don't forget, your job is to change the world. One subscriber, one customer, one deal at a time. We can do this and you can do this. If you look at the world and you're discouraged or depressed, just understand it's going to get better. It may take some time, but it is going to get better. Why? Because you're going to accomplish your mission, which makes it easier for me to accomplish my mission. All right? So that's it for today. I love you and I like you. And EdTalks Live is